Recording has begun.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the District Board of Trustees emergency meeting, as it's called, since we're here virtually for the Seminole State College District Board of Trustees meeting on June 15th, 2020. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order, and we'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Tina, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
I would be honored to do so if you please rise with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, we're at the public comment portion of the meeting. I don't believe we have any requests for public comment at this point. Any requests, Lisa? No? For sure.
Mr. Chairman, we do not.
Okay, great. Then we'll move on to the President's report. Dr. Lorenz?
Thank you. And thank you once again for your patience and flexibility in meeting in this virtual environment this one more time. I'd like to start with a strategic planning update. The strategic planning process has continued going strong despite the interruption of COVID-19 under the leadership of Mark Morgan and the Institutional Effectiveness and Research team. After concluding these strategic prep rallies in which we collected feedback, Dr. Morgan convened the writing team. He did a masterful job of integrating all of the feedback received at that point into a single document for the writing team to work from. And the team held several virtual meetings and worked through a draft. The resulting draft was then presented to the college community through 12 virtual game time forums, which provided an opportunity to give ratings on each of the items in the strategic plan, as well as written and verbal feedback, comments, and opinions. Ratings were consistently high on nearly every element of the strategic plan draft. Most items were rated around 4.5 out of a possible 5, and no item scored below 4.2. This indicates that we are clearly on the right track. Participants provided plenty of comments for us to review and consider in the final refinements. So now the next step will be to reconvene that writing team to review the ratings and many pages of comments to guide their work. I'd like to propose that the board hold a workshop focused on the strategic plan in August. This will also provide a forum to develop and decide on a new set of key performance indicators. You might recall in our meeting back in November, we reviewed the existing key performance indicators, and some of you indicated that you'd like to revisit those in light of the new strategic plan. And in that workshop, we could also review the board's self-evaluation tool that we plan to implement to ensure it's in alignment with both our strategic plan and accreditation guidelines. I'd like to talk a little bit about the CARES Act and sort of review where we've been and talk about the ways in which we've begun dispersing funds to students. As you know, the Secretary of Education, under the authority granted in Section 18004C of the CARES Act, allocated $8.1 million in emergency grant funding to Seminole State College. The Act requires recipient institutions to use no less than 50% of the funds received to provide emergency financial aid grants to students for expenses related to the disruption of campus operations due to the coronavirus pandemic. Colleges must disperse all funds within 1 year of receipt. Seminole State College received, therefore, $4,075,030 for institutional use and the same amount for direct student support. The college created a cross-departmental team to review CARES Act requirements and develop a plan for fund distribution. The group consisted of members from CTS, financial aid, advising, business services, and academic affairs. The team met routinely over a period of weeks to establish a plan for fund distribution, and teams attended over a dozen webinars convened by the Department of Education, the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, Florida College System member institutions, and the Florida Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators to ensure compliance with intent and guidelines established under the CARES Act. As guidance from the Department of Education continued to change, committee members continued to seek clarification and direction to develop the best plan for our students. The college considered many factors in the creation of the fund usage plan. The first decision was to support students who struggled during the change to online instruction. To support this effort, the college provided students the R20 course retake option. This option, as you'll recall, allowed students to retake spring courses over the summer term without additional expense and without academic impact. This decision was truly student-centered and required college staff to expend hundreds of hours to implement. The next phase of student support came in the form of a monetary stipend to student populations. The team felt it was important to support our students that were facing difficulties during this time. A subgroup of student services, IT, and academic affairs staff started to evaluate numerous ideas and consider a variety of options for providing funds directly to students. The group took into consideration the guidance provided from the CARES Act, which encouraged institutions to consider the student's socioeconomic status and prioritize those students with the greatest financial need. Based on this direction, the committee developed the following distribution plan. To assist in allocating the emergency funds, the college implemented a tier awarding methodology. The basis of this determination is in accordance with the Department of Education's recommendation of granting funds to students with the greatest financial need. The college will prioritize Pell eligible students who may be most financially vulnerable to the pandemic and students with an expected family contribution between $5,576 and $7,500. Students are eligible to receive funds once per financial aid year. So a student could potentially get two disbursements, one in this financial aid year and one in the next financial aid year. The college agreed to use a portion of our institutional funds in support of students as well. So for spring 2020, all Pell eligible students, and you have to take 6 or more credits to become Pell eligible, will receive a one-time disbursement of $700. Those with an expected family contribution, as I mentioned earlier, on their FAFSA will receive a one-time disbursement of $350. For summer students, we have the same distribution, $700 for Pell eligible and $350 for the next tier. Looking forward to fall 2020, because we anticipate that the impact of the coronavirus pandemic will be sustained over many months for our students. All Pell eligible students will receive a one-time disbursement of $500, and those in that next tier would receive a one-time disbursement of $250. Looking forward to spring 2021, we will continue to evaluate and discuss that as we move closer to that semester. It's possible that students could receive a one-time disbursement based on status and the balance of funds that remain available. I signed and submitted the letter of certification and application on April 20th. Upon approval, a statement on my behalf as project director was uploaded, outlining the college's intent and distribution plan on May 20th, within that 30-day window. During the first round of funding on May 26th, the college dispersed $890,500 to approximately 1,800 students. The funds were posted to the students' bank mobile accounts on June 1st. In addition, students were given the option to have funds directed to a bank account or debit card, or they could receive a paper check. As of June 9th, the college has awarded $1,117,550 to 2,287 students. And of course, we hope that these dollars will make a difference to the students. So I'd like to talk a little bit about our virtual graduation. Students graduating from Seminole State College this spring had an opportunity to safely celebrate their achievement with family and friends during the college's first ever virtual graduation ceremony on May 20th. Now we know a virtual ceremony cannot fully replace the celebration and pomp and circumstance of a traditional commencement in person crossing the stage. But we hope that the 845 graduates and their families that watched the event enjoyed the celebration, and we really hope that they will join us at UCF in December for our next in-person ceremony. The final numbers are in for the number of awards completed, 2,250, and you can see on the chart being displayed now the breakdown of those awards. Of note, we had more than 1,000 associate degrees awarded, 979 certificates, and 37 high school diplomas, 215 baccalaureate degrees. So we are really excited about that. And I want to extend my thanks to everyone at the college who worked really hard to come up with this plan and to implement it, so our graduating students had some sense of a graduation ceremony to share with their friends and family. The stars have aligned and they are shining bright on the Emil Buehler Planetarium at Seminole State. The planetarium joined efforts with the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory for a nationwide coordinated and educational live stream star party on May 22nd. With everything revolving around social distancing, the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory partnered with planetariums and expert stargazers across the country to come together to offer a tour of the cosmos with the nationwide live stream star party. This unique one-of-a-kind event took place across multiple time zones and gave participants a deeper look at the stars from different spots across the country. The virtual star parties utilized online video to spread the love of astronomy while practicing social distancing. Amy Oliver, the public affairs officer with the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, reached out to Seminole State after seeing the success of our virtual star parties that we've been hosting during the college's physical closure. Derek Demeter, director of the planetarium, said, quote, "We immediately agreed to participate in the nationwide live stream star party. We knew this would be an opportunity for Seminole State and the planetarium to reach an even larger audience, both nationally and internationally, and help inspire a new generation of astronomers and space explorers. We also want to give them hope and an escape during this dark time and allow them to explore the great wonders of our cosmos. Congratulations to Derek and the planetarium team for making this uplifting event happen." And I also think that Derek just had a birthday, so happy birthday, Derek. The Center for Fine and Performing Arts at Seminole State presented a live reading of the play Silent Sky in partnership, again, with the college's Emil Buehler Perpetual Trust Planetarium on June 4th via Zoom. Silent Sky tells the true story of 19th century astronomer Henrietta Leavitt. In a time of immense scientific discoveries, Leavitt and her female peers worked at Harvard Observatory, but find their ideas and theories pushed aside or ignored altogether by the men in the department. Trying to balance career and family obligations, Leavitt, undeterred, used her free time to engage in scientific work that led to discoveries that had a deep and lasting impact on the field of astronomy. Theater professor Nikki Salomon, who directs the play, said, "We are so excited to partner with the planetarium to give our students the platform to showcase their hard work, talent, and dedication to this beautiful story. As an educator, I always look for the lesson in things. I think the lesson here for our students is to never feel defeated, never give up, and to always push yourself to create positive solutions out of the worst of scenarios." The live reading featured two special guests, acclaimed playwright Lauren Gunderson, who provided a brief introduction to this performance of her work, and local astronomer Barbara Harris gave a presentation about Leavitt's discoveries and the legacy that she left. Congratulations to Professor Salomon and to the entire staff in the Center for Fine and Performing Arts and the planetarium for coming up with this unique way to allow our students to continue to showcase their artistic talents. So I'd like to share some congratulations to our new doctors. Congratulations to Dr. Annalise Bush, Director of Global Engagement, who earned her PhD in Education and Human Resource Studies with a specialization in higher education from Colorado State University. Congratulations to Dr. Nancy Gasper, Dean of Nursing, who graduated from American Sentinel University with a Doctor of Nursing Practice degree. And congratulations to Dr. Leslie Samarco, Professor of Nursing, who also graduated from American Sentinel University with a Doctor of Nursing Practice degree. Since our last meeting, I have virtually stayed in touch with our community through a few meetings and events. We were able to host our Foundation President's Club Spring Call, where I updated the participants on everything going on at the college, from the shutdown due to coronavirus, CARES Act funding, budgeting for next year, and all the good news going on at the college. I participated in the Orlando Economic Partnership Board meeting, several Florida Chamber meetings and webinars about the effect of the coronavirus on our state and the phased reopening, which have been really interesting. I produced our initial podcast. Actually, I should say Michael McCurdy produced our initial podcast that Kim Allen and I spoke about innovation in higher education in. And that has now been pushed out to the college community. And I think our second podcast is currently in the works. Shayla Harris invited me to give welcoming remarks to the Student Development Commission's, quote, 2020 Vision for the Future of Education conference. I've participated in the Higher Education Research and Development Institute, also known as HERDI, South Confab on strategies for the fall, and was able to speak with fellow presidents around the Southern region about what they're doing this fall. We had the opportunity to participate in the Foundation's annual Dream Cup fundraising event, and thank you. All of our board members and many of our former board members were there, and we really appreciate your participation and support. And actually yesterday, I gave a keynote address at the League of Women Voters of Seminole County's annual meeting, which was also a really great opportunity, although virtual. So I'd like to take a moment to address the news that we are all watching every day that continues to highlight and expose the racism and injustice experienced by African Americans in this country. As you know, I sent a message out to our campus community about this recently. And in that statement, I tried to communicate and represent what Seminole State values and my hope that the college and each of us can act as a catalyst for positive change. And I know that you, as our members of our Board of Trustees, share that hope. And I know that everyone is sending out such statements these days. And I know that statements without action are hollow. People have been asking me how our staff and faculty and students are reacting to both the incidents that have occurred and the resulting protests and social movement. And it is clear that our community wants to see commitment to change and see evidence of that change in our actions. So one step that I've taken is I called together campus leaders who represent different employee groups and each of our campus student government associations. I invited them initially to join me in writing a joint statement. That quickly evolved into working together to develop a joint action plan. We will be meeting for the second time this week, and I am inspired and impressed by this group and their ideas. And the members of this group are Marcus Williams from the Career Service Employee Council, Barbara Coleman Foster from the Professional Technical Employee Council, Deborah Mead from the Faculty Senate, Scott Freeman from UFF, Babakar Job from our Black faculty and staff group, Janet Balanoff, who leads our Equity and Title IX office, Johnny Craig, Vice President for Student Affairs, Nay Ashby, Associate Vice President for Human Resources, Kayla Brown, the SGA President for the Lee campus at Oviedo, Josiah Lewis, SGA President for the Altamont Springs campus, Erica Intriago, the SGA President for Sanford Lake Mary, and Grant Kepke, the SGA President for Heathrow. We will keep the college updated on how this group evolves and the recommendations that emerge. I want to thank each of them for their commitment, their honesty, and their willingness to jump into this important work. To close, I want to share an important email I got today entitled A Statement of Solidarity from Newman Civic Fellows. The statement was written by fellows from the 2019 and 2020 cohorts. You might recall that this year, our student Megan Anderson was named a Newman Civic Fellow, and last year, Kia Singleton had that honor. The fellowship is awarded to college students committed to the community who have demonstrated leadership capabilities and a drive for solving challenges facing the public. These are outstanding student leaders committed to social change. In the statement they wrote, the Newman Civic Fellowship recognizes and supports community-committed students who are change makers and public problem solvers. As fellows, we commit to advocating for equality, fostering difficult conversations, and establishing inclusive spaces on our campuses across the nation to bring liberation to historically oppressed voices. I hope that all of us at Seminole State can follow the lead of the Newman Civic Fellows and make that same commitment. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to take questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Dr. Lorenz. Any questions for Dr. Lorenz?
Okay.
Oh. I think Amy has a question.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Trustee Lockhart, you're recognized.
That's all right. Wanted to talk a little bit more about the fine and performing arts. Do they have a plan moving forward in the world of coronavirus for how bands and orchestras and choruses are going to continue to meet?
I believe that Laura Ross is on the line. Lisa, if you could unmute Laura, she probably has the best answer to this question. But I know from Jim Smizek in music that they have gotten creative and have been working with smaller groups of musicians rather than the large groups that are a little bit unwieldy in the virtual world. Laura, could you speak to that question?
Sure. Good afternoon. Yes, there are actually national guidelines for music educators that we are following to ensure, and choirs are a real problem. So we're going to be following those guidelines when we do get back in the classroom. So they're on top of it and doing their research.
That's great news. I'm glad to hear that there are guidelines for you to follow, so you're not you're not creating the system on your own. But it's also just really good to hear that the programs can continue in some form. I know that's been a concern of quite a few people that have brought it to my attention. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Good question. Any other questions? Okay. We're on to Dr. Hammond as a information item for us on reopening.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So as you can see, we are going to be talking about the reopening task force. Today, the idea is to give you an update where we are and some of the work that we have done, how we did it, and some general recommendations for you to give us some feedback and see how we're moving forward for reopening the college. Next. The first thing that we'll talk about it is the charge for the reopening task force, the framework we follow. We created some subcommittees and we'll talk about that. Some general recommendations, and then I'll open it at the end for some Q&A. Next. So the charge basically came from Dr. Lorenz, and we are using our existing emergency response team, just like we're treating this just like any other emergency. And once we activated the emergency response team, the task to this group was to examine all aspects of the college and all operations and try to determine a safe way for us to reopen the college during the fall. We are going to do some things later this summer, but mostly is to talk about how we're going to come back to operations during the fall term and beyond. The team that worked on this actually went further than the fall, but we'll focus our conversation today on the fall. Next. The framework that we used is based on the incident command system. Those of you who are in law enforcement or have done some work with that know what the ICS means. It's already in place. It has a very structured way of working and making sure that you follow some protocols to come up with something that is efficient. We also have been putting together our COOPs, our continuity of operations plan. We simply had to take those out of the shelves. We update those every single year. We do this because we're in a hurricane season every year, so we keep up with that. Obviously, this case is different than a hurricane because it's extended closure, but at the same time, the same things apply. If we were going to shut down the college for whatever reason, we went back to those documents. Next. I'm not going to go through the entire ICS plan, but what's important here to notice is that this is a process that once you start, it's not over just because you got to the last box. It literally starts all over again. And a case of the COVID-19 is a very fluid case. It's a very fluid things that are happening. We need to be able to adapt and need to be able to change based on the information we receive. You know, when we started this process was 4 or 5 weeks ago, there was nothing directed to the state, from the state, to how to proceed. So we had to work with the information that we had in place. Obviously, we communicated with the CDC, we communicated with a lot of agencies. We looked at what other colleges have done, and we put together the plan that you're gonna, some of the ideas you're gonna see today. And again, once we get to the end of this, we start all over again and review as much as we have to. Next. So based on that plan, we created subcommittees. So we took every one of those boxes and we created subcommittees related to each of one of those operations. And from that, we looked at members from across the college, and almost 70 employees serve in these committees. And I'm going to tell you this, I am so proud of this group, because you have to understand, it was quick. It was, we got a meeting today, start Monday. I mean, it was one thing after another, getting together, having the meetings, not only because of the complication of not being available in person, but also in terms of the work that had to be done in a very short period of time. Here's why it was critical. We start registration a week from today. So we have to make sure that our faculty, our staff, our students know what our plan is going to be, because they need to make decisions in terms of coming back to college and in terms of enrolling for courses. Each one of these committees had one executive team sponsor, and in some cases, multiple team leads. And then they're the ones who work with the individual committee members to put up some recommendations. Next. This is the structure of the subcommittees. We created with the phase report subcommittee. It's essentially the incident commander, if you will, if you go to the ICS. Then we created a student return subcommittee, an employee return. We separated those into non-facing students and student-facing. The environmental safety subcommittee is actually the prevention subcommittee. So that group of people were not just looking at what is safe to do, but also how can we prevent this further spread of the virus. Logistics is very simple. They're the people who get to buy everything that we ask, the rest of us are gonna ask them to buy and produce materials and supplies. Post accounting, they get to pay for it. They're the fun people that we gotta give them the bill and they get to cut the check, right? And the communication subcommittee will put together all the results of everything we've done and put it in a format that all of our employees, students, and a community are able to understand, able and easy to read. Next. So we're going to talk about the general recommendations and how we arrived to those. Next. So our recommendations were based on a lot of resources. We looked at just about everything. We actually sent employee service to employees and students. Students were approximately 21,000 students received the survey, and roughly almost 7,000 of them returns, about 33% return. They're pretty much 50-50 split. 50% of them want to come to school, the other 50% want to stay home. Specifically, those students that are attending programs that require them to learn face-to-face, welding, automotive, I mean, things that you just cannot learn by sitting in front of a computer, nursing, things that you just have to do in person. The other 50% were very upset that we were even considering to reopening. So we are in that balance, and I think that we arrived to some solutions that will meet that balance. The same thing with employees. We had faculty and staff members that wanted to come back because the programs they work with requires them to have human interaction. And we are going to recommend some things that will do it and do it safely. We follow the CDC guidelines. Instead of a reopen phase approach, just last Thursday, if you may have known, the governor and the commissioner released some directive for us that allows some recommendations, not directive, I'll take that back. It's recommendations for us to reopen the campus. We were actually very pleased that they recognized that not every college and every district or every school district or every institution, university is the same. And they basically say this is a locally driven decision, and specifically made that a statement in PACS and say this is not a set of mandates. These are recommendations, and they're relying on the local leadership to make those decisions based on what happens in their area. So for instance, Seminole County is very different than Bay County because of what's been happening down there. So we were very pleased that it's got a lot of detail, it's got a lot of good information, but at the end of the day, they are relying on the local data and the local information to make those decisions. So we were very pleased that that was in place. Seminole County, we are working very closely with the EOC since the last couple of days. They are now doing interactions in the morning, having meetings in the morning and the afternoon, just like we do in a hurricane, debriefings, briefings just to talk about what's happening. So we have opened those starting today, and we'll do this morning and we'll do every day until further notice. We actually talked to our partners on SCPS and try to get an idea of what you guys were doing over there, Tina. And that's important for us because, as you know, if the students, kids are at home, students have a hard time coming to work, employees, coming to school, the same thing for employees and for faculty and staff. So we talked to them, we looked at their preliminary plans. You have a lot more complicated things to worry about, like buses and what to do, how do you separate. And God bless you, because I don't know how you're going to do this, but I guess you're working on it, you're working through it, and there's some good work that they shared with us. So we're very pleased with talking to them. We also talked with local hospitals, doctors. A couple of hospitals made their doctors available to us. So we actually took a lot of our ideas and presented it to those doctors, and they gave us feedback. Federal guidelines from the CDC and for higher education. And the last one, the need for certain programs to meet the face. We really have no choice. These programs have to continue. Students need to graduate. They're expected to continue to do their work. And they're asking us to reopen those programs, and we'll do it safely. So with that, next slide, please. First and foremost, is what we do for living here at the college, education, right? So most lecture format classes will continue to be held online and remote at the beginning of the fall term. Number two is the lab courses, block hour programs, studio courses, things that require face-to-face. We will schedule those starting the very first beginning of the semester in the fall. We are going to have, and Laura can speak to this if you have questions, we're going to have a couple, very limited number of courses opening next week for Summer B, but that is the contract training and something very specific, very small number. Those programs by themselves, all of these programs that we're going to bring on campus, we're going to give them some basic protocols for safety, but they are going beyond those protocols, especially if you're nursing or EMS and things of that nature. They already do that as it is, so they're extending what we're going to propose. So if you open classes for students on campus, about 30% of the courses will be on campus. The balance will continue to be either online or remote. And for us, remote means that you will come in and you'll meet a certain time as if you were coming here, but you only attend the classes for 1 to 2 every day or something to that effect. As opposed to online, that is always any time of the day you can log in and do the work. So if we open the college for students, then a certain percentage of students and employees and support groups have to come in. We have to clean the places. We have to have security. We have to have labs. We have to do things across the campus to support the group of employees and students that are going to be doing work here at the college. We will continue to do, to the extent possible, meetings internal and external. And if we have to come in person to support educational programs, we'll do so. Again, all taking into consideration our protocols that we put in place. We also need to work with our partners, and by that I mean, let's say hospitals. Students need to do clinicals. Students need to do things that they don't necessarily have to do here at the college. So we have to work with those partners so they will allow the students to continue to work, or in case they have to miss it for whatever reason, we don't want to penalize those students. Next. So publicly accessible places like the library, the Academic Success Center, food services, and bookstore, they're working already in creating separate protocols. Students have been emailing the president and the rest of us, please open the library. I'd like to come to the library. I enjoyed that way. And they're begging to have these resources. We're doing all the other things remotely, but it's nothing like they want to be here and work with their tutors. They want to be able to do these things. Obviously, the food services and the bookstore, that's contracted out. So those companies may have their own protocols. By contract, they're supposed to follow what we decide to do, but they may have additional protocols. So Joe Measure and his team will continue to work with them. But the idea is that if you have students in here, you may have to provide them some food and some employees as well as food and access to some of those resources. Environmental Safety Subcommittee, and we also call it the Prevention Subcommittee, they already laid out lots of specific protocols. There are too many to list here, but the idea is, how do we keep the college safe? How do we keep our students safe when they come back? The goal is to have our supervisors and leadership at different departments to work with their employees to figure out which ones we can continue to work remotely when we can, which ones we need to have on campus. And if we do bring them on campus, maybe do it in a way in which not everybody's here at the same time, and separate it and stagger the workload. Once we have all this, all this information. Like I said, I could sit here and spend the rest of the week talking to you about the work that we did. So we'll put that together. The goal is to have it done by Friday because students start registering on Monday. So we need to have all that information in place. You'll see it, we'll post it, we'll make it available to everyone, and we'll have all those details behind our plan. But this is just to give you a general idea where we're heading and what the college has proposing for reopening. So with that, I'll entertain some questions. Tina?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dick, this isn't more on reopening, but maybe look back at what we've had, the campus being closed. Were you seeing any savings in utility cost or water cost and that type of thing?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, and I'll get ahead of that with Joe. It's about $50,000 a month savings from electrical and from utilities cost. So it is significant just because, campus. We do have a small portions to employees coming in and they rotate for whatever reasons they're coming in, and we made available 2 days a week where we have from 9 to 12 Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we encourage employees to come in to pick up mail or do things that they just don't have the resources at home. And they report to security, we make sure that they report it. So we put protocols in place for those folks. But the majority of the time, the buildings and the campuses are closed. So last time, Joe reported to us about $50,000 savings in utilities. Obviously, those are not recurring because once you reopen, that goes away, right?
Right, and I'm surprised because I thought it would be more. Maybe you didn't put your air conditioning as high as the school district did. You couldn't even go into the buildings, they were so warm. But Dick, you said that by Friday you'd have all of this documented for classes starting Monday. That's kind of a short window.
Well, we have all this stuff done already. We just need to put in a format that is easier for people to read. So we have everything, the different committees work together, and we have come up with a specific, what you saw, general recommendations. So behind those general recommendations, there's a ton of details. That's the part that you have not seen. That's the part that the report will have. And the details could be, wearing a mask. The details could be, washing your hands. The detail could be having supplies for people who use disinfectants. How are we gonna deal with programs that are gonna be face-to-face? How are we gonna continue? So there is details and pages and pages of information that'll be too long.
And I think we're also trying to leave open some level of flexibility because like a chemistry lab functions differently than an automotive lab. So we're asking the faculty and leadership in each of those programs to take the sort of minimum that we've set and then also add additional safety measures that they might need for their specific scenario.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were totally transparent. We communicated with all the stakeholders, the students, the faculty, before they get on campus, because I don't think anybody wants to do any harm, but if they don't know, they're not going to know the protocols to stay with. And did we present that to Seminole County EOC? Because I know the school district, we had to present ours plan for even graduation to get the authorization.
We'll share with them. We'll share the plan and as I presented for approval, we'll share the one. We also have to share with the state as well. They have asked to do that by Friday. So we'll share with them. We have been in communication, so they pretty much know overall what we're trying to do, because we also have a contingency plan. So what if we are not able to reopen because this thing goes back to something really, so our contingency plan is pretty much go back to what we're doing today and may have to modify some things. So again, this is very fluid. The whole report will address all those things.
Okay, thank you.
I think Amy had a question.
Along the lines of the advice that's being given, and how much of it would you say relies on individuals wearing masks versus other types of social distancing?
I think if for our proposal, it's going to be all of it. We're going to follow CDC guidelines, and the mask issue is we're still debating a little bit here and there, because some people think it's good, some people think it's not. We talked to the doctors, and doctors are saying yes. So we're still debating in terms of where we're heading with that particular issue. But let's just talk about in general terms. CDC guidelines, we're going to get the social distancing. We're going to keep things that we think will make it safer for people to come in. Reduce number of students in the classroom, for instance. Maybe schedule a larger classroom for a smaller number of people so they can actually sit down in places. We know that the people who are going to be coming in, they already have given us a list of all the protocols. And Dr. Lawrence mentioned the chemistry department. So the needs of every department may be different, but we are going to encourage them to follow certain things that the goal is to keep people safe. And we're not going to force anybody. We have people who are a higher risk than others. That stuff has to be taken into consideration as well. So all that will be in the recommendations.
I'll just add that we've gotten a lot of help, which I really appreciate, from Dr. Husty in Seminole County, and Alan Harris and others. And I think, what we're hearing locally is that masks are strongly, strongly recommended. And Dr. Husty has expressed frustration when he doesn't see the masks being worn. And he's just been a good friend to the college through all of this. So I really appreciate that.
I think, unfortunately, the mask topic has become politicized to the point that we seem to be making decisions a little less on the merits of the science and a little more on the politics of it. And so I just didn't know if you all had tackled that in your conversations and where you'd fallen and all that. So
yeah, we talked extensively with the doctors, and like Dr. Lawrence said, the doctors from the hospitals encouraging to wear it. They're saying the science expressed that it's about 50. You reduce the chance of getting infected or infecting somebody by 50%, which is pretty high. So that we looked at it, we had talked about it, and just today we got a link from the state telling us that they have ordered 15 million. The Florida Department of Health ordered 15 million face coverings, and we could request them and get them for free. So there's opportunities for us to provide it to the students and employees if they don't have it, and these are washable. So there are things that we're still finalizing. Good news, we got to get it done by Friday.
Dr. Hammond?
Yes.
So I take it, and you answered this question already partially. You said that any change would revert back to status quo, what we're doing right now. But obviously, you've been watching the increase of
yes,
this past week of cases, of positive cases throughout the region and the state. And although I believe this was somewhat predicted, I don't know if the prediction is just going to continue or it's going to reach a peak and then start coming back down again. So in your conversations, are you guys taking into consideration anything related to this recent increase of cases?
Yes, and that's part of our idea, having that contingency plan. Right now, we're working with the UOC. Like I said, we're talking to them, and yes, the increases were very sudden, the curve just went back up. But this is the idea of meeting with the EOC and talking to all these organizations, CDC, regularly. So if we have to change our direction at any given point, we'll do that. We still got a little bit of time if you think about it, because we don't start until August the middle of August, the end of August. Yes, we are going to have a couple of classes starting next week, but that's very, very small. That's very small. We have a few weeks. We have almost 2 full months to make any adjustments before we go live with the whole process. And if we have to change, which is a matter of communicating and letting people know that, yeah, if we have to change, we'll put all the classes back to remote and back to online. So that's our fallback.
And I would say, it's difficult because we have to plan so far in advance for the fall schedule. I mean, it's been baked and ripped apart and baked again multiple times in preparation for registration on Monday. And getting the feedback from students and employees on that survey was really important. But Bob, this is one of the reasons why we are maybe being a little bit less aggressive in terms of returning to campus at the beginning of fall and having about 70% of our courses remain online or remote. We're also very cognizant of the fact that our population has an impact on our community and the incidence of disease in our community. So in our mind, it is worth it to maybe take it a little bit more slowly than some other institutions may be doing. Tina?
Just to let you know, Dick, I had ordered through our local Department of Health 5,000 cloth masks for the school district. We already picked those up, but we also have another 75,000 on order. So if you contact Vernice, she can probably give you enough today or tomorrow for you to start, through that summer term to make it available to everybody, and then go for it and order your bulk for fall.
Mm-hmm.
We ordered some already for next week, and I think we already got those.
Okay.
But now that these other ones became available, so I'll let you know if we come to a bound. I had a vendor that offered me 2 million of them last week. He said, I got them ready for you if you need them. I'm like, I don't need 2 million of those, but they're expensive. So I like the ones that come from
Free
the state because we don't have to pay for those. Those are free. So any other questions for us? Thank you, Dr. Calderon, I appreciate it.
Dr. Hammond, part of the discussion, and I know reopening and coming back, but with what we're seeing in the data, and obviously more younger people are getting are getting the virus now, and obviously we're kind of in that age group, that 20 to 35 group that's getting it, that's lowering the average age of those that are coming down with the virus. Are we? Is there discussions around what we're going to do after we reopen? If there are cases, outbreak gets to that point, what do we do? And the protocols as far as moving back online or shutting down the class, and then how long?
Thank you. That's a good question. We in fact, this morning we're talking with Kate and May. First of all, we have to get the reports. We currently have a protocol in case, and we have been following the protocol in case anything happens for an employee or a student that was already affected. We're gonna create forms, that we're gonna create documents for people for reporting it. So that's part one. Part two is that if it is a lab or if something to that effect, we automatically have to shut it down, because you have to go at least for 2 weeks and clean up and do all the deep cleaning and make sure it's safe before you even attempt to reopen it. So it's a risk, obviously, and hopefully we will do everything up front that will avoid the spread. Meaning by that, as you walk into the classroom, maybe wearing the face covering, cleaning and making sure it's social distancing. But if it does happen, then we'll have to react to that, and those plans are in place for that. I mean, we know of a couple of colleges, state colleges, who did that already, and within 3-4 days had to shut down again for 2 more weeks. So unfortunately, it has happened to others, so we just learn from them, and our plans will address that as well. We'll have to automatically react to those as soon as we find out. We've been lucky that so far the cases that were reported, even at the very beginning of all this, were cases that were isolated where the person wasn't even here, and there were students and employees, but they were not here at the college. So.
Plans for screenings, whether they be paper screenings or temperature checks or anything like that in certain courses, will there be any of that within the?
For some of the programs, they'll probably do it. I'm not sure that we're gonna require for college-wide, just because it's extremely difficult. We got buildings that have 25 ways to get in. So you will have to narrow all the entrance and the exit to a single place, or at least the entrance. So that becomes very difficult. But I know for programs that in nursing and things that they're already used to this, they already provided us with additional protocols, and they are going to be doing things like that. We are going to recommend people to check themselves before they come to the college, do a self-check to make sure that if you're sick, please do not come to the college. So we're going to encourage people to do that. Obviously, we can't enforce it when you're at home, but those are things that we'll put in place for faculty, staff, and students to do before they even leave their home. So we're hoping that they follow that.
Just thinking about those electronic screenings, like even if
Yes.
screening before they log on to their computers, like asking questions or anything like that, just to make sure that there's that level of disclosure, because that's really, really important that if somebody is ill, they stay home and they're disclosing if they've been in contact with somebody or they've been in, they've had symptoms or something along those lines. So that's kind of what I was getting at as far as the paper disclosures or any kind of screenings that we make them disclose in order for public safety.
Scott, I would say that's going to be part of our communication campaign, really helping people to understand that they are part of a community and they have particular responsibilities as an individual. And we will have language in the syllabi, checklists for, at different, in the student portal or in Canvas at different points. So the students are constantly interacting with those questions and being reminded that the expectation is that we all take our responsibilities as a community member really seriously. But I don't think that we're going to be implementing temperature checks on our campuses. We're going to ask people to self-check. At least that's our plan at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, that was what I was saying, was making sure that whether we took the temperature, whether we're saying to them, have you had a temperature in the last 24 hours or something like that, at least they're being asked and held accountable. That's important that they let us know for the health and safety of the college community, of our employees.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Howitt, I know that what you just said, Dr. Lorenz, that you don't want to get into taking the temperatures, but just in case we do go down that pathway, and maybe for a very specific lab classrooms where it's a physical impossibility to socially distance, just know that Seminole County Public Schools already went out for an RFP for the touchless thermometers, and there's a very varied large price differentiation. So if you need to piggyback on our contract, the work has already been done. So feel free to do that.
Great. Thank you.
I'd like to just take to acknowledge Dick's co-chair of the emergency response team and this task force, Miguel Sierra, who's on the line, I think. I'd like to thank him and all of the other members of the task force, the leads, the members, everybody, for their leadership and hard, quick, efficient work on all of this. It is great what has been accomplished in this short time period. And I know because of their deep knowledge at this point and their talent, if we need to flex and change, we can do that quickly and effectively.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Dick.
And absolutely,
Great
if
work.
you have any questions, feel free to contact me, and or Dr. Lorenz will respond to what you need to know.
Absolutely.
We'll see you.
Great work.
Thanks.
Okay. We are.
So I believe there is an agenda item that we need to add to consent.
There is. So Chair finds cause to add 4D, the addendum on the virtual desktop infrastructure, the VDI, the Dell contract. That was the one that Dr. Lorenz, the one that we approved back in December. We're basically giving you or your designee the authority to negotiate and sign that contract at this time.
Correct.
That, and I find just cause to do so. So that'll be added to the categorical consent agenda. Item 4D, if you're keeping track at home or scoring at home.
Just to be clear, Mr. Chair, that the standard is good cause, so you find good cause?
I find good cause, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the qualifying. All right, we've had time to review the categorical consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions, comments before we take a vote? No? All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. On to the action agenda, the financial actions budget. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, trustees. Good afternoon, Dr. Lorenz. I'm going to share my screen. If we can get technology working here. Okay, there should be PowerPoint with a title. Okay, I see people nodding their heads. Thank you. Today we're presenting for the board's approval the 2020-21 proposed college budgets for the various funds, including most importantly the operating fund 1 budget. This is a state requirement that a budget is presented to the board, and then Dr. Lorenz will sign certification and send that up to the state, and it needs to happen before July 1. Due to the current COVID situation, as part of the governor's emergency rule, and I'm not sure if the State Board of Education actually requested an extension. The date of July 1st still remains. So this is going to be supplemental detail and some summary detail of what is in the full board agenda packet, which is on page 888. Yes, 888 of 989. So we'll go ahead and let me click on here. Okay, there we go. Technology is working. So you'll recall this agenda from the board workshop at last month's meeting. It's the same. Again, going to keep it high level. Haven't changed much of the slides materially. As you may be aware, the governor has not had the General Appropriations Act presented to him. Therefore, he has not signed the budget, and we'll talk about again the approach that we're taking with state appropriations forthcoming. So let's go ahead and jump right into the current year projection. Okay, so at the time we had to submit the items for the board agenda deadline. These are the same numbers that were presented last month. Okay. And so the far left column is, again, the current revised budget reflects all budget amendments through May, and the current projected end of year results. Again, at the time, we weren't sure what the enrollment for summer was going to be. Also, we had some projections of expenses that, again, we weren't sure where they were going to be. But just to also expound upon what the question that Dr. Hammond was asked about the savings. Yes, our utility savings for the month district-wide is about $50,000 each month. Okay, so let's take a look at the percentages. That's actually that's a 37% decrease for us. Our monthly utility bills are approximately $135,000, $140,000 per month around this time. Depending, of course, those will fluctuate depending, of course, upon the temperature variations. If spring is a very, very warm spring, obviously utility bills will be higher. So we're seeing our utility bills about $85,000. So that $50,000 increase, that's a 37% decrease in utility expenses. And then also we do have a number of staff continuing to do that critical work to support the virtual and remote instruction and the good work that our faculty and students are doing as well. Okay, so no changes here, but the main takeaway is that we expect these numbers to be better than what you're seeing. So let me see if I can do the laser pointer here. Okay, here we go. So this deficit, we expect to be better. Again, we reported that, hey, it's even better than budget with some of the changes that were done, but when final summer enrollment comes in, and it's just over 6%, I believe, as of this morning. And we also expect decreases here to be lower. So an increased revenue, decrease in expenses, we expect this deficit in the budget to be better, okay? And then moving on. All right, so what we did is we just looked at, obviously, the current year projections. We're now going to go through each of the various budgets. Obviously, the biggest is the operating fund 1 budget, or the unrestricted budget. Okay, so again, we haven't changed our key assumptions. We are budgeting on a very, very conservative revenue estimate of 3.3%. Okay, again, with all the uncertainty, this is unprecedented. You've heard that word we continue to use it. And then also, as Dr. Hammond reported, some of the information coming from the Seminole County Emergency Operations Center about this, the increase in cases as we move through phase 2 and also phase 1 and phase 2. We're not sure ultimately where we are going to end up with our FTE increase, but we feel that we're going to be able to hit the 3.3% increase. Again, other things that, students were 50-50 on returning to campus and reopening. So again, we're budgeting a very conservative revenue estimate, and we feel that we can make that. Also want to emphasize that we are not requesting an increase to any tuition or the statutory local fees. And again, the Seminole State College, it has not increased tuition since, I believe, 2011. If my notes, to that point in my notes. Yes, no changes since 2011, other than, of course, course and special course and user fees that we talked about in the prior month. We are not recommending any recurring compensation adjustments. And again, just a recap of the 3 things that we knew at the time of expenses that we were going to have to cover regardless of if we did nothing else. So again, insurance premiums, we continue to cover. We will continue to cover any increases of health insurance for our employees. There still is a cost share of $50 a month that we were asking them. We're continuing that. Again, you already know the reasons for the increase in the insurance rates for next year, $253,000 for casualty property, as well as restoration of the CAT fund, the catastrophe fund. And then also, we are continuing to budget an increase in FRS rates. The governor has not signed the specific bill, which is separate than the General Appropriations Act, but we expect it to be passed in one form or another because that number is actuarially determined. So anyway, those are the key budget assumptions for the current fiscal year.
Joe, what's the amount of money that 18% represents in FRS?
Yes, sir. It's right around $700,000.
Okay.
Thank you.
And it is actuarially sound, but they didn't have to do it all in one year either. So, right. So everyone takes a hit at one time, but yeah. The other thing is I wanted to clarify. So no tuition increase, tuition rate increase. We did have some rate increases around, I think, our four-year programs required statutorily, but the board didn't vote. So I remember we had to do a corrected agenda item one time. Recently, it was before you, maybe, Joe. Do you recall that, Dr. Lorenz? Or Dick?
No, I do not, but maybe Laura might. I believe that was also before my time, but the tuition rate for the baccalaureate degrees is slightly higher than for the non-baccalaureate degrees and certificates, but I don't have that history.
At one time, we had voted on a no increase in tuition, and the statutes required that the baccalaureate degree tuition go up, and we had to correct that. But I think generally we have not done one since 2011. That is correct.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification. And you are correct. It is 75% is the target. So when the governor does sign the Appropriations Act, and we expect to take a revised budget to you, and I'll get more into that in a future slide, we'll be able to address that. And yes, that if it didn't have to happen under Dr. Lorenz's time, it didn't happen
right
in the 6 months that I've been here. But yes, good point. Thank you for clarifying.
And another concern on the budget is today is June 15th, and we know that the governor's presented a bill or budget has 15 days to veto, sign, or allow it to become law. So the clock is ticking. If it's not today, it would extend beyond the July 1st deadline if he's not presented by, I would say, the end of business today. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
People are starting to buzz a little bit. I think it's going to happen soon.
That is correct. And also from our legislative affairs person, he has indicated to us that a number of bills have been presented recently. Again, obviously nothing in the scope or magnitude of the GAA. All right. Thank you, Chair Howitt.
I have gotten an answer. We adjusted the tuition for baccalaureate programs when the universities raised theirs, and we needed to stay within the 75% range. It was about 6 years ago. Love that chat function.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
I'm glad I didn't dream that. So
thank you, President Lorenz, and also your helper that sent you that message. Something to consider, Chair. Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at now is just get a little bit dirty in the details. Again, very high level, looking at revenue and expenses across the major categories, and then going to have a slide talks about specifically staffing that you requested we put back in from the budget workshop, and then going to get a summary of the budget that we're proposing to the board for the operating fund. Pardon me. So again, this is the big unknown here. If you can see the red dot on my screen, okay. State funding, as we just talked about, the governor has not been presented with the GAA. So we're going to go with, to be able to meet the state board obligation and the rule to have a proposed budget to continue to receive the same appropriation that we're currently receiving into the next fiscal year. We're presenting the same budget amount. Tuition and fees, you can see here that it is increased approximately 2.6 million. Okay, so a lot of that is related to the projected student tuition increase. Okay, also because right now the plan is to do.
It's based on the increase in enrollment, not tuition.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Dr. Lorenz, for clarifying. I'm trying to look in the camera. Yes, it is for the enrollment, not the tuition increase, because no tuition increase was presented for approval. And then also the related distance learning course fees, and again, some of the lab fees for some of the curriculum redesign, as well as some of the required accreditation that the board approved last month. Okay, so no changes here to other fee revenue. So presenting total revenues of 82 million. These numbers are in thousands. Let's take a look at the operating fund expenses. Okay, so again, a little bit detailed, broken out the total expenses into the three major categories: compensation, which is salary, wages, and benefits; operating expenses, as well as capital expenses. Okay, and again, capital expenses, these are Fund 1. This is not construction or repairs, remodeling, renovation. That's in Fund 7, which we'll get to in a moment. Okay, so no material changes here. Again, just some minor things to get the balance, the budget balanced. Okay, so you can see here that we show an increase in compensation, but this is actually a decrease when you take out the FRS increase as well as the health insurance. So again, a lot of hard work from staff, program directors, deans, to take a look at areas where they could be more efficient, all right, and take a look at headcount. As Dr. Lorenz has said in prior meetings, anytime we have a position vacancy, it's an opportunity to see if there's a better way to do business. And on the staffing chart, which we'll get to, or the staffing levels history, you'll see some of that hard work that the team is doing. Operating expenses, there are some increases related to some of the degree planner stuff, some of the mandatory increases that we're having, of course, in insurance that we already talked about, also some of our software licenses. But as you recall, we discussed at the last workshop, specifically with the degree planner, we expect to have more student retention and completion to help us hit some of those very critical benchmarks for our students that are looked at favorably by the legislature. But there's also, we're going to have a reduction in expenses of some things that we're doing now in different contracts related to degree planning. So overall, looking at operational efficiency increase, in addition to, again, having to cover those mandatory costs to continue. Okay, and then capital expenses again, just where we are with the uncertainty, we're going to be triaging and doing those on an emergency basis. And again, the focus will be on if there's an opportunity to refresh equipment in the classrooms, we are going to do that. In models, for example, science models, that equipment that is used by students, technology in the classroom as well. Okay, all right, so this chart here, again, is are the staffing levels. And you'll see the history here, and specifically, Chair Howitt, you were curious as to the staffing levels for our FTE when we were at the enrollment peak, okay? And this was, again, experienced by all colleges in the Florida college system. And you can see here at 15,000, all right, so I'll go ahead and highlight these lines here for those that are having a hard time seeing this on the screen. This here is total personnel, full-time employees, okay? This olive line here is student head counts, not student enrollments, but their actual head counts. And down here is student FTEs. This is the full-time equivalent, okay? So back in 2010, 2011, when we had 15,000 FTE, you can see here, personnel FTEs was 1404, and then here student head counts was 32,000. All right, so let's fast forward to where we are now, the projection of 13,299, okay? You can see that our head count is rising, but it's still increasing, but more importantly, you can see that we're down almost 100 full-time employees or the equivalent, okay? So again, we also normalize this by so if a part-time employee is working, we have 2 part-time employees working 37 and a half or 40 hours, those count as 1 full-time employee. So again, we are at nearly 100 less full-time employees. Again, so a good operational efficiency target. I'll pause there if you have any specific questions or other thoughts on this, if you do.
Any questions?
I have a question for you, Joe. Do you find that we're accomplishing this mostly through attrition? I know there were some changes, modifications that were made, but I know we did an early buyback for retirements a few years ago,
Yeah.
and I don't remember what year that was, if that's where we see that dip happen, but.
That may have been 14, 15, or 15, 16. It was before I got here.
Yeah.
I think, this is a result of multiple methodologies or strategies that we've used to try to operate more efficiently. And one, I will say, is really great management of our academic schedule, because adjuncts appear in this number as well. When you do the calculation to put them into that full-time equivalent number. So efficient academic schedule management, and some of it is through attrition that we have not refilled because we've been holding open positions for at least 6 months recently, and using that opportunity to reorganize when possible. So I would say that those are a few things that are contributing.
Thank you, Dr. Lorenz. And again, the other major takeaway is you can see that this gap here between the 15 and the 1329. All right, look at the 32,655 head count versus the 31,347. That gap is smaller. So you've heard Dr. Lorenz and the team talking about it. We have more students taking less classes. So these individuals here, they represent bodies having a heat load on the HVAC, for instance, or more importantly, requiring service in our libraries, requiring service in our student services, and impacting bathrooms and other open spaces for garbage and custodial. But again, the downward trend, not like it was here where we were increasing during the decreasing period here. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. The budget. This is just a summary of the prior ones. Rather than making this 2 slides also, I went ahead and put the funding of the funding of sources on one slide. This is different than what was presented at the board workshop. So again, the good news here is that we are using less reserves than we have in prior year. Okay, and again, the hard work that the team is doing. While this is a decrease, yeah, this is actually a decrease in the reserve. So this is a positive number, which is good. All right, it's not an increase in expenses. All right. Of this deficit, 1.2 million is going to be, we expect to fund from our auxiliary Fund 3 reserves, and that's what the F3 stands for. And then the balance of 300,000 we're expecting to fund from Fund 1 reserves, or the F1, and presenting again a balanced budget when we take into these factors. Okay.
I would say that, I just want to caution all of you as our board members that cuts may be coming, and I'm glad that at this point in the process, we are not overly reliant on reserves, because we may need to look to reserves as we go through this fiscal year, depending on what kind of news we get from the state.
Thank you, Dr. Lorenz, and that gave me an opportunity to catch up to my notes, and appreciate you pitch hitting and putting that very important information that I have on the slide. All right, so that is the Fund 1 operating budget. Now we're going to shift gears and go look at the remaining funds.
Tina, did you have a question?
I did more a comment, an overarching comment, Joe. Excellent work, but quite frankly, we all know this budget probably isn't worth the paper it's written on without having a budget from the state of Florida. So when we go back to use better numbers, once we get them, these are small line items, but we might want to look at it. I noticed on page 896 in the board book, we had an increase of expected revenue for facility rentals and an increase for food vending. And if people are not on campus and people are still wanting to social distance and not have a lot of large gathering, I'm not so sure how we're going to achieve those goals of an increase of income in those two areas. So we just might want to look at that when we revisit the entire budget after if we do today pass this one.
Very good. Thank you for that feedback. I'll debrief with you offline, because from the budget workshop, I did ask my team to make sure specifically that we did have a reduction in facility revenue based upon that. So thank you. Let me go back and again, if you permit me, or Dr. Lorenz, and I'll work with her.
Of course.
Let's definitely get that taken care of. Thank you.
I would say one possible reason is we have increased some of our rental fees, but I'll let you two debrief.
Thank you. All right, great question. And so let's go ahead and move on to Fund 2. Let me make sure that, okay, good. Now you should be seeing the restricted Fund 2 budget. So this is student activities fees, our federal and state grants and contracts, as well as local contracts with any city or counties. So what you're seeing here, obviously, what you're seeing is a history of fiscal year. The left bar is the amount of grant dollars that we have been awarded. And then the bottom or the horizontal is the various groups. So federal grants, as you can see, state grants, student activities, and then the foundation, other local grants. All right, so the big amount there, the 8.6 million, that is primarily due to the CARES Act funding. Okay, so this is the student portion, the institutional aid portion, as well as the strengthening institutions, or the minority students piece that we got. And, looking at the dollar amount, at the time, we did not get formal award of the minority strengthening institutions. We have since received that, so that also could be reflecting some of the NSF grant monies in there as well. All right, but this is just a summary snapshot. You can actually see the detail of all of the various grants that we have in the full board agenda. But again, just wanted to put this in here so you can see the trend of where we're going, and then more importantly, again, how we're accounting for the CARES Act dollars. Okay. All right, so auxiliary Fund 3 budget, and again, Dr. Calderon, yes, we're going to go back and meet with my team and let's debrief on that. But what you're seeing is the high level. These are the high level ones, the high level auxiliary cost centers and revenue centers that we have. The main takeaway here is the total, and more importantly, how we're doing the transfers. So this $1.3 million in transfers, this goes to support operating Fund 1 expenditures and important things like the refreshment of technology, as well as Fund 5, the scholarship dollars for our students. And I have a slide coming up. I believe it's this one. Here it is. Okay, so again, here you can see the transfers that we use in the various categories, $1.2 million going to Fund 1, and then $171,000 going to Fund 5. And again, this is what right now we're budgeting from Fund 3 transfers. Again, this is in thousands to those other funds. All right, Capital Fund 7 budget, no changes here. I think we shifted a couple of dollars. We had one added here as a miscellaneous project. The main thing here you can see is this is the total available resources here on the left side of the screen, and over here are the proposed expenditures. So again, I'll just remind that what we budget for capital improvement fees, we don't spend until we actually have that money in the bank. Again, we don't want to engage in any contracts for construction or remodeling until we have the dollars. And again, many of these are multi-year projects, but we need the board's approval to do that. So just want to assure the board again that we're not writing a check that we can't cash. Okay, so ultimately, this is the total here for our capital construction or Fund 7 budget, $17.1 million, which again is includes carryover as well as new projects, and this is our projected capital fund reserves at the end of the fiscal year. Okay, and then we have concluded the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for your attention and your questions, and thank you, Dr. Lorenz, for pitch hitting there. And also, I will point out again, the board agenda item itself has a lot of the detailed items that we went over, but I'll just reference. I want to take this moment. Let me get my notes in my packet. You saw a line item for our capital improvement fee bonds. Just thinking of a question that you may have, we have about $2.5 million left on the repayment of those bonds, as well as I want to point out to the foundation specifically on page 899, they actually provide $2.9 million of support to the college for scholarships, endowed teaching chairs, and some other things that they're doing to help alleviate the burden on Fund 1. For example, they're taking some of the burden off of some of our community sponsorships. So thank you, Dr. Gillen, as well as the foundation board. And then also it lists our college support that we do. Great return on investment, as you can see, if we're getting $2.9 million. And again, we're paying for some of the accounting staff and support related to the awarding of those scholarships. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. And do request that the board approve the 2020 and 2021 proposed college budgets. Oh, let me stop sharing my screen. Chair Howard, if you're speaking, your mic is muted, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. All right, we have two approvals, recommendation for approvals before us. One is to approve the Seminole State College budget for the fiscal year 2021 as presented. And do I have a motion?
Move to approve the budget as presented.
I'll second the motion, but I like Dr. Calderon's reference to the fact that this may not be our final destination.
Yeah, I think that's true. Obviously, we're in a holding pattern and a waiting pattern all the way around. So I think everyone is, and holding our breath. But I like the fact that that our enrollment is showing some positive signs, at least in the short run, and hopefully we know it is counter-cyclical to the economy. So we're hoping that the economy and our enrollment improves over time. That So,
When we see that there's room to improve in terms of getting the students who are here at our college to take more classes each semester. That is an area where we can improve enrollment without relying on a poor economy.
right, exactly. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimous. And the second is to authorize the president or designee to prepare and submit all annual budget reports as required by the state that reflects the actions of the board. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
We have a budget
For a minute.
for a minute.
For a hot minute.
We'll see.
Okay.
Okay. Next,
Joe disappeared, but I think he's got the next one too.
8A,
Oh, I
There
do.
you go.
Thank you.
Wells Fargo Banking. You're not done yet, Joe.
No, sir. I thought I was handing off the baton to Dr. Hammond. But yes, I am ready. Okay, so let me get to my spot here. All right, on my notes as well. Thank you, Chair Howitt. So I present for the board's approval, and thank you, Cheryl, for having this up on screen. An approval to the amendment with Wells Fargo, the banking services agreement for an extension of 1 year. You can see there in the background and the history. Oh, let me get on the same page here as my notes. Okay, there we go. The current contract ends on September 4th, 2020. And with the disruption caused by COVID, we weren't sure, at least initially, this is going back three and a half months, how we would be able to do an RFP and meet the public notice requirements. And obviously we are at that situation now, having a virtual board meeting. But due to the time constraint, we're requesting that the board extend the agreement for 1 year to allow us to properly prepare in accordance with Florida statute and state board rule, a good request for proposal and get it on the street and renew with the perspective with the winning or recommended respondent, presuming board approval next year after September 4th, 2021. You can see the background there on the specific statutory reference as well as board policy requiring that we have a public depository. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have on the item as well.
Any questions?
I do have questions, but do you want a motion on the floor first?
We can do that. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second.
So my questions, Joe, on this is going through September of the following year. Since we do have time to conduct a good RFP or RTN, however you're going to choose to do it, is it a cleaner cut for you to end it at the fiscal year with the July 1 versus a September? So would you prefer to have this renewal only go to the end of the fiscal year?
Well, pardon me, that's very intriguing. I had a chance to, thank you for the question. I had a chance to meet with my team and ask that question. For us, the folks in the financial services area, that is actually when they're going to be right in the middle of fiscal year end. So yes, they would be potentially having to transition if a new vendor is recommended and selected through that. But at least that was the idea of leaving it as is. But I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in and thank you for your consideration of that.
Okay.
Also, Joe, one quick question. On the statutory references for the depository, does it have to be actual banks like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, or can it be community banks or others that can participate in this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cortez. So yes, they have to be what's called a qualified public depository. Okay, so they have to register, and more importantly, for those public accounts, they have to apply. And for those public accounts, they actually have to collateralize some of their assets with a third party. So yes, community banks can participate, and I know that. Well, I'll make sure that at least the community banks in our area are included on the bid list. But yes, as long as they meet the qualified public depository status, they are able to apply. And then of course some other, I believe will require them to be, depending on that, they need to be domiciled in a certain location. I think have at least an office or a principal place of business here in Florida. And we most likely will also, well, actually, let me not get into the details of the RFP because it's not being presented for consideration. But thank you, great question.
Thank you.
So the third option to renew, so is this the third and final option to renew under the current contract with Wells Fargo?
Yeah, so we are actually right now in the third and final year of the 8-year agreement. This is actually a 1-year amendment to extend it. So this would be the fourth 1 year.
And what about the possibility of looking out there and see what's, as far as state contracts that are out there now, as far as a piggyback opportunity?
Sure, we always look forward to those opportunities. And yes, that would be something that we would consider as well. Again, if the board, Dr. Lorenz, of course, approves, and as of course, if the board approves.
Sure.
Joe, you made a good point with the September perhaps not being a good date, and maybe Wells Fargo would be our bank going forward in the new RFP. Would it help you to end the contract before that July 1 to clean it up before you're knee deep in budget? I'm just trying to make it as flexible for your team since we've had this agreement for so long. We're in such a fiscal environment right now, and I'm not so sure that whatever interest rates or whatever we have with them, if they're 8 years old, this is a whole new banking environment, and I hate to lose out on anything.
Okay, yeah, that would be something that I'd like to consider with Dr. Lorenz, and so I'm not sure how we would write the flexibility of that, or if there's a different approach.
The challenge here is that our original agreement with them, we must have entered it in September. And so each time we extend 12 months, I don't know what their appetite would be to change that 12-month period.
Okay.
We could certainly potentially approve this today and then explore another amendment to our agreement with them and bring it back to you once that's concluded.
I was just wondering if we used the word maximum to September, it would give staff the flexibility to fit it into your time frame for your best and ease of change. If indeed there is going to be a change, there may not be a change.
Yeah, flexibility given the current situation, of course, is appreciated.
So we would have to develop that language with Wells Fargo, right?
Right. So what we could do, there is a proposed amendment that is attached to the agenda item, but yes, we could put some. Trying to look at the item here.
So I think it is on page 9.4, number 1. Oh, sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
I was just noting that in the amendment that's being presented, if you look in the first paragraph, there is an early exit. It does require 120 days notice, but it does have an early exit as it's currently written. So there is an opportunity if the finance staff were able to move along quicker than perhaps maybe anticipated right now, they do have that option that they could exercise and get out a little early.
That would be great. I just want to support the team as much as I can.
Thank you, Dr. Calderon.
So that
yes,
addresses that issue.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Now we move on to the network infrastructure, and there he is. welcome back.
Welcome back, right? So I think I always comes up with the big ticket items. The good news is that you just approved a budget that has this in the $700,000, $400,000 that you saw. If you saw that in the approval process, we've been planning to do this. This is something that happens every 6 to 7 years. Has to do with infrastructure. However, this time around, we have to do a little bit more due to the working remotely. Our systems are running between 80 and 90% consistently capacity. So what we've done in here, since we have some institutional dollars from CARES Act to deal with issues related to bandwidth, so we are trying to address some of that now, as opposed, we're working on replacing the technology, but it was not to the level of what we're doing right now. So now that we did this, we work with our partners and we have modified the infrastructure. We had to go back to the drawing board pretty much and came back with something that will allow us to support the increased load. So partially, we hope that we can use some of the CARES Act money. If not, this is built in, this is infrastructure, this is part of the, we're authorized to do it. It's built into the budget, it's not an additional cost, it's just there as part of what we do. And our goal is to try to get this whole thing done while the college is closed. So this is why we bring you today. And I'll take any questions.
Okay, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion in a second, then we'll take questions or comments. Do we have a motion to recommend approval of the contract and with Cisco or financing entity for network infrastructure upgrade and allow the president or designee to execute documents related to this transaction? I like how you put them both in there this time, Dick, so we can make sure we have it. Good job. Nice job with the technology.
Learn our lesson.
So I have a motion. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve item 8B as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any questions for Dr. Hammond? No questions. Motions on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your help.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think we're back to Joe.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
You didn't go far, did you?
No, sir.
Good. Back up.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. She has the item on the screen. Present for the board's approval, change order number 1 to the Building B help desk, the kiosk remodeling project. This is an increase to the project of just under $2,000, $1,885 to be exact, and it's for the removal of a dry fire suppression system, sprinkler head, and inspection. Okay, so again, just a little background on the project. It's a help desk primarily to serve students rather than navigating the catacombs in Dr. Hammond's area, which are locked down probably just as strong as Fort Knox. Anyway, in IT areas, obviously with fire suppression, you don't want water. Okay, so it was a dry firehead. Well, they took part of that to make the space, and dry firehead fire suppression does not play well with human beings. So anyway, it's to remove that, and the existing sprinkler head, I believe on the other side is enough. They're going to modify it. It'll be enough to make sure life safety and compliance with all fire codes is observed. Be happy to answer any other questions that you may have on the item and request the board's ratification of change order number 1.
A motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions? No? All those in favor? Signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
Thank you.
Next.
Okay. So taking a couple of other change orders. This is the Building G change order for the roof. Okay, so because of the sinkhole structure damage, and as we reported previously, some of the roof structure above the theater is going to be covered as part of the insurance. This is a deductible change order for that portion, which we expect the insurance to cover as part of the full repair of the facility, including the roof. And then there's also a portion where we've asked them to put up replace some siding or some flashing, some paneling. So let me go to my notes here. Right. So the total net effect is a deducted change order in the amount of $37,326. You can see that on page 915 and 916. Thank you, Cheryl. And be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and also request the board's ratification of the change order number 2 for Building G at Sanford Lake Mary.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Questions? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. All right, and the last change order, this is related to the Building H, or the Health and Wellness Center. This is a $0 change order. It's actually to extend the agreement by 5 days. The notice to proceed was issued to the contractor 5 days before or 5 days after the start period. So they've asked to go ahead and get the ability to be able to have the completion date extended by 5 days. I think I might have mentioned this at last month, that because of the current situation, they've indicated to us that they might be having an issue getting some of the larger pieces of infrastructure related to the building, such as the HVAC and some of the air directors and handling. This is not being requested in this change order. I just wanted to, again, give some early messaging. Maybe it was in the construction update, but anyway, this is for a request for 5 days. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have on the item, and also request the board's ratification of the change order number 1.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions? Nope. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so this last item, this is another one that falls under the required annual reports that we've been taking to you for your approval. So the capital improvement plan, you'll recall seeing this in prior years. And what this is a 5-year look ahead for some of the new building construction, some of the larger renovation, remodeling projects that we plan to use some local dollars. There's also an accounting or a history of what we spent our PICO dollars, our local dollars on, which is in the CIP 1. All right, but the main thing is that this document is used through the State Board of Education, the Florida Department of Education, to rank and prioritize any PICO appropriations, or they call it the project list. Okay, again, it's of course contingent upon legislative approval, and more importantly, funding by the state of Florida. You'll see the overview of the 6 projects on page 935 of the agenda item. Thank you, Cheryl. All right, so there it is, and just these are the 6 that we're taking. All right, and one of the things that you'll notice is that the Building L, that has fallen off based upon recommendation and discussion with our legislative affairs team, but also the Florida Department of Education. So this is one that we're hopeful that the governor will approve. Priorities number 1 and 2, those are also on the governor's desk for approval. Hopeful and fingers crossed that he will do that as well. But because they have been on the project list recently, we're going to be requesting that we're going to be putting in for PICO appropriations to help with those very critical pieces of building infrastructure. The only new project that you can see from a building construction is the one that we've had in prior years. It's priority number 6 for a STEM building in Altamont. Okay, and you can see there the total dollar amount of $47.9 million. That includes everything, and this is a statewide, this is a formula-based thing, but it's also ground preparation, underground utilities, site development, all those things, as well as a very sophisticated multi-use building that has technology, the more expensive labs, of course, classrooms and offices. This has been on the project list for a number of years. We're not going to go through the entire packet. It's over 30 pages, but again, wanted to, more importantly, have you see what we're going to be listing as our projects, our priority projects, is because those are shared. The results of this are aggregated among all 28 colleges. The Florida Department of Education, they apply formulas to it, okay, and you can see how we have to do a return on investment calculation, which is in the document itself, which begins on 955. Again, this is at their request. All right, ultimately, then these projects are ranked against other statewide projects, and they come out on the state board, on the PICO request, or the capital facilities request, that then the legislature considers. So this does need the board's approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have on the item or the full agenda packet. Again, there's a lot of detailed pieces. Let me also point out, we are not putting in a request for operating costs of new facilities. That has not been funded in, I believe, approximately 4 or 5 years. And again, after discussion with individuals in Tallahassee, there is not expecting that to come back, at least at this point. And again, I request the board's approval and would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion in 2 seconds. Any questions for Joe? No comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All right. Foundation update. Trustee Paul.
Yay, the fun part of the agenda.
Right.
Well, as Dr. Lorenz talked earlier about our very successful Dream Cup, that we had 100% participation with all the Board of Trustees, that despite some of the changes and extra precautions that were due to COVID-19 pandemic, the 37th annual Dream Cup was a great success. The event raised over $44,000, which will be used to help support the women's golf team, academic programs, scholarships, and other needs of the college. Following guidance from the county and local officials and social distancing guidelines, we completed our last fundraising event of the year, and we're still able to have a great time. A special thanks to our sponsors, Addition Financial, Wayne Dench Distributing, Jack's Fifth Avenue Deli and Ale House, and special help from Orlando Health, Advent Health, Trademark Press, Publix, and several others. Believe it or not, the weather was cooperative, and we were happy to be able to have this event and finish the year off on a very high note. And speaking of high notes, our Blue and Gold employee giving update I'm proud to present is that our contributions by employees are pacing slightly higher than last year. We'll be gently touching base with certain employees who have given in previous years but haven't this year to see if they'd like to make a gift and be counted for this fiscal year as well. The foundation wishes to thank all employees that are supporting scholarships, programs, and areas of needs across the campus, especially those who have given to the Seminole State COVID Relief Fund. Our fiscal year 20 spring mini grants that have been distributed. Our review committee met last week and were able to award 11 mini grants totaling $16,083 in support directly to the college. The awarded project titles and funding amounts have been uploaded to the foundation website, and we know that these funds are more crucial than ever before to help our faculty and staff. And last, our fall term foundation scholarships application period opened today. So if you know of anyone who could benefit from a foundation scholarship, the applications are open starting today through July 15th. So we encourage all students to go to foundationscholars.com to apply. And that, Mr. Chairman, is my foundation report.
Thank you, Trustee Coleman. Trustee Lockhart.
Well, I have a question for Dr. Gillen. I see his thumbs up. So Tim and I were at a local restaurant the other evening, and someone was another patron. Actually, we thought it was, didn't know if it was patron or not, but they were wearing a Foundation for Seminole State College buff.
Nice.
I just was, hey, I love your buff. Turned out it was really is actually an employee of the restaurant. And I said, where do you get something like that? That's pretty cool. And he said, well, I played in the foundation golf tournament recently. And so I was just wondering where one might get one of those, even if one might not have swung a club at the golf tournament.
Well, you can probably see Bob Cortez is holding up one that he could probably ransom to you, but you just came out there and actually just missed getting the little packet, so we have one here for you, and I'll make sure you get it after the meeting.
Well, thank you. I think they're a great marketing tool. It was really cool, and it was nice to. I don't know about y'all, but I'm having trouble keeping the things around my ears, and they're not. So I thought the buff is a great solution.
Well, then, and sometimes too, you can wear it up top and keep the hair back, and then just bring it down if you need to. So I would.
This
You
could
would
be
call
another fundraising opportunity. I'd buy one.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I'd buy one. I thought it was great. So
Typically, after the tournaments, we usually have you guys all have something at your places, but we are virtual. So, and knowing that you guys were out there but probably didn't get the little gift bag, I'll make sure you guys get the gift bag. So I know that Bob and Scott got them because they played in the tournament. So I'll make sure you guys get one too.
that's great. I really wasn't angling for a free gift. I was.
That's okay. That's typically what we do is we end up making sure you guys get them. So that's good. Glad you spoke up though. I've seen a couple out in the community too.
Good job. Good job.
You.
All right. Yeah, those were very nice. Bob, you haven't opened yours to use it yet, though. Or do you have two?
No, I got it. I'm going to be using it. I haven't gone out at all, but we're going out this week, and I've got it with me.
There you go. He's ready to go.
Take it with me, and it's nice and ready to go. Unless Amy wants to pay handsomely for it, I'll be more than happy to save it for her.
Right. I'm sure she can get one for free. She knows people. All right. Other business. We're going to move on. And thank you for the foundation update. It was a great golf tournament. Had a great time. You know, I'm terrible at golf, but I'm good at fun. So, and that was a fun time. So thank you. Thanks for a great time. So we're going to go on to other business. Dr. Lorenz.
Yes, so we have a couple of decision points. We do have a board meeting scheduled for July 20th. From our perspective, we don't anticipate that we would need that board meeting. And I know in past summers, we have often been able to cancel the July meeting, give everybody a month's rest. So we could do that again, should you choose to. We do need to set, if we do that, we need to set the meeting date for August. And our typical date would be, you know, just looking at the third Monday would be August 17th. It doesn't have to be that day. I'm just throwing that out because it's our typical meeting date. And I would like to suggest that we do a workshop at that meeting. So potentially start at 12 or 12:30 and then begin the regular meeting at 2 o'clock.
Just to clarify, under the governor's order and Commissioner Corcoran's June 30th letter, this would be a face-to-face meeting in July or August, depending on what we do.
I believe we may. So the original recommendation was to only hold board meetings on an emergency basis and to do so virtually through June 30th. So now I think that it would be our option to come back face-to-face or to continue virtual, as long as we, you know, are able to uphold all of the requirements that we need to meet in terms of a public meeting. In the case that we come back face-to-face, you know, I'd love the board members' feedback if you feel comfortable with that. We will look at the board room and the ways in which we could space out the audience and ourselves and the executive team. The current capacity of that room is 60 under normal circumstances, so the capacity would be reduced. And I know Chair Howitt, you have expressed interest in continuing to make, whether we continue virtual or in person, to continue to make these board meetings accessible to more than would fit in the boardroom, given the recent attendance online.
And I'm open to discussion around that or consensus, but I think it's been successful. I think we've reached many more people than we would have just, you know, having a live face-to-face, and especially if we're still in a social distancing mode, to be able to, you know, be more transparent, to be more out there so people that want to tune in and hear a budget discussion or a workshop or something can do it through streaming, whether we're live or if we're in the Hollywood Squares like we are right now. Either way, they can see that, and we're more accessible to them. So,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Dr. Lorenz. As far as the July meeting, I have no problem meeting in July, and the reason for that would be we don't know when we're going to get input from the governor on this budget, and I hate for staff to have to wait for our input or resolutions or votes until August. And knowing how our calendars fill up months in advance, I'd rather hold it in our calendars for now. And then if we still don't have the feedback from the state, I think it's easier to cancel a meeting rather than try to schedule it. But I'm going to have to leave it up to you and your staff. If you feel there is actionable items for us to take in July to keep the college going forward, I'd be more than happy to do so.
That's a very good point. And perhaps we should hold July 20th and sort of operate in wait and see mode. And we would, cancel it if we know that there's no business before the board, and then go ahead and schedule whatever date in August, just so we have both of those on the calendar. After July 1st each year, we need to set our calendar for the next year and elect the chair, vice chair, and foundation liaison. So if we hold the meeting in July, I would suggest that we take care of those two actions as well. If not, that would be pushed to August. So just so that's on everyone's radar as well.
and just to be clear, that because I'm not, I don't know the detail. Maybe Paul could weigh in. Under the current edict or letter by the commissioner, and also the actions under phase 2 by the governor, we can still meet virtually versus in face-to-face. That's an option, or we have to go back to a face-to-face under current sunshine law.
To my knowledge, at this point, it would be our choice. I probably should review the document that they released last Thursday again, just to be sure. Paul, do you have different information?
Yeah, I believe, absent, again, an order from the commissioner or the governor to the contrary, I think the board has the authority to continue to hold virtual meetings as long as we provide the appropriate notice. We've followed all of those procedures for these meetings. So if the current order lapses and there's nothing else, I think the board could decide to continue to meet virtually, and certainly can always continue to stream their meetings if that's their decision. My recommendation would be, if we are considering keeping the July date, just in case, especially on the budget side of things, I would recommend that you at least go ahead and set an August date, so that if the chair and the president decide to cancel July, we already know what that August date would be.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Okay.
I'm okay with the August 17th date. The only date that I'd prefer to steer away from would be the August 10th, which is the first day for the public school system.
Yeah.
I'm fine with August 17th as well.
I'm also.
That's good. All right. And then the July date was July 20th?
Yes, and that was part of
And
our
that's-
original.
And that's already on the calendar.
Yes.
So we'll just leave that on. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we just really need to take a motion on the 17th at 2.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think it would be appropriate for you to entertain a motion to set your August meeting for the 17th and authorize yourself and the president to cancel July if there's no business.
Okay. Sounds like a motion to me. Do I have
So moved.
second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And can I ask you as board members, your level of comfort with coming back physically? Are there particular things you want to ensure that we have in place for that meeting if we do come back physically? And if you don't know now, if you could reflect on that and let me know, because we certainly want everyone to feel safe and comfortable, and make sure that we meet your needs.
I think to make sure that at the dais in the boardroom that we could in fact social distance amongst ourselves. I think that's important, that we can be 6 feet apart. I don't know if that's possible or not. Certainly, we would have to modify that. We could also look at the automotive center. We could certainly social distance there, and meetings there before. So we could do something over there. But I think you guys can determine under whatever the guidelines are for safety that we're practicing those, and as long as we are. I certainly don't want to be wearing a mask during the meeting. So
I'm getting feedback that maybe the student center would also provide another opportunity for spacing ourselves out.
Absolutely.
Amy, were you going to chime in?
Well, I agree with Scott that, keeping distance to me would be really important, because it's so hard to communicate effectively with those masks on, as important as they are. It's just, you lose a lot in the translation behind that. And I think that would be important for us to be in a place where we can be far enough apart to not have to wear them.
Even if it's the foundation buff, it would still be hard.
Even if it's the foundation buff, as wonderful as it is.
I would suggest a July meeting for now, since we may cancel it. Just plan on doing it virtual, and then if we're going to do something face to face, possibly do it for the August. That way we have at least 2 months to work out the logistics.
I feel like if we're asking our students to come back and the employees and faculty to come back, that we should also do it in a responsible, safe way, and ensure that as well. So
I anticipate around July 20th that not that many employees would be back on campus. We are using the period between about July 6th to about July 24th, primarily for supervisor training and for adjusting our physical environment. So it's possible that some employees would be on campus by July 20th, but I don't expect a significant number. Once we hit August, that will increase.
Yeah, I'm good.
Paul, you were trying to chime in.
The only thing I was going to add to the discussion is that if we are going to have an all virtual meeting, as we're doing now, we'll have to know that for sure, Dr. Lorenz, by the time we publish the notice, because there are special notice requirements if it is an exclusively virtual meeting. So we can figure that out with Cheryl and make sure we collect that information ahead of time, but that would be the drop dead date.
And do we have to determine where the August meeting's going to be now is the question, because if we're going to do it in a different location, I mean, I think can we just say it's going to be on this campus, or does it have to be a specific location on campus?
We'll need, again, by the time we have to publish notice, we'll need to have the specific location in the notice, but we can figure that out later as we get closer.
And we may have to, for public comment, for example, try to find some hybrid situation in which we may be physical, but we cannot have a full big audience. And maybe public comments, we could still accept them by phone. I'm just sort of thinking ahead.
Email.
Yeah, or email, I guess. Yeah. So I think there are in-between options that could help us to accommodate people who want to view it by live streaming and people who want to participate potentially through the use of phone.
Good. All right. So do you have everything you need? We're good. We're set for the July meeting.
So we're set for July. Are we set for virtual in July? Do another meeting like this?
Get virtual, especially since your team's not going to all be there. I hate to give any additional burdens to your staff right before fall opening. So I'd rather make it as easy as possible.
I think virtual for July is good, and then for August.
Great, and we'll start thinking about August now, so that we can troubleshoot any potential hurdles to public participation and viewing. And yeah, I think those are my items for other business.
Okay. No other business? Anyone else? for the good of the order? All right. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. See y'all.